body. Very nice State of the City address that we had a little bit earlier. Good evening, council members, city officials, home audience. We've had all of our department heads in here earlier this evening. I'd like to welcome you to the February 11th City Council meeting. We have 3 items on our agenda this evening. Mr. Fawson, if you would, please continue with the roll call of members.
Corcoran.
Here.
Fairchild.
Here.
Florima.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Kearney.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Patrick.
Here.
Kroll.
Here.
Tatman.
Here.
If everybody would, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes to the previous meeting have been distributed for review. If there's no corrections, do we have a motion to accept the minutes? By Mrs. Neal, seconded by Mr. Hines. Roll call on that motion.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yes.
Florima.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Kearney.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
The minutes have been accepted. Moving on to our reports of our committees. Who would like to go first? Mrs. Patrick.
Utilities Committee does not have anything on tonight's agenda. However, I'd like to report on a committee meeting that was held just before the Mayor's State of the City. And it was to appropriate $7,984.60 to water distribution for temporary staffing due to a recent retirement. And questions were asked. Utilities Director Official gave a very nice update on where things stood with all the projects we're working on. And concerning this, we do need to fill that position just for a temporary basis. Everybody's agreed to it, and it will go to the Law Director for legislation. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Ms. Fairchild?
Thank you, President Arnold. The Human Resources Committee does not have anything on the agenda this evening either. However, we did have a meeting last Monday on the 4th of February in regards to legislation to correct and revise Ordinance 109-18, specifically Section 4D. The assignment is only to clarify vacation accrual for non-bargaining employees. That is all I have. It is at the Law Director's office, and I do expect legislation at the next meeting. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Kearney.
The Community Affairs Committee is excited about ordinances supporting the United Way of Ross County's ownership of the Ross County 211 resource land designation and making a 3-year commitment of $5,000 per year towards the project. We have a guest here that I leave for the mayor to introduce at the time.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kearney.
And also on item number 2, which is the second reading, repealing section 509.10 of the codified ordinance, which speaks to suspicious persons and deals with homeless and begging. The reason for this particular ordinance being deleted is that the Supreme Court has ruled that this section of the ordinance is unconstitutional, so it is being repealed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kearney. Anyone else? Committee reports? Anything? Yes, Mr. Kroll?
The Finance Committee has one item on tonight's agenda. That is item number 3, which is a first reading, and it is an ordinance to increase the limit of the income tax refund blanket purchase order to $500,000, and the auditor will fill us in with more details on that. But I do want to, at the appropriate time, request that we waive the 3-read rule. But this was a request that came about to help, again, clean up our processes. And But Nagel, you want to speak to that in your
Sure.
report?
We passed we passed a resolution or an ordinance to fix an audit issue that we've had in the past. And part of that ordinance was to create super blanket POs, and then normal POs. And the thing is with blanket POs, you have to set a dollar limit. We set that dollar limit for $75,000. Income tax refunds are classified as blanket POs. However, because we do issue so many of those throughout the year, we usually issue around $450,000 in refunds from the city. We had to do a specific one for this thing only that would increase that to $500,000. So it's not appropriating money, it's just a technical thing that we do to make sure that we don't go over that $75,000 limit.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Crowell. Thank you, Mrs. Nagel. Anybody else? Moving on, our mayor, Mr. Luke Feeney.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Councilwoman Kearney mentioned, I'd like to cede some of my time tonight to a couple of guests to talk about the 211 system. And I also want to point out, as Council Clerk Fossen pointed out earlier in an email, that this is the second month of the year and the 11th day of the second month, meaning that today is 211 day. We did not plan this, I promise.
Yeah.
In fact, one of our presenters tried to get out of presenting on 211 day, but I demanded that she attend. So we have two presenters actually, Kim Jones from Medina Health System and Kelly Yeager Nelson from United Way, who are here to present tonight on the expansion of the new system and are available to answer any questions. So if you would just approach the podium.
Thank you for your time this evening. So as Mayor Feeney mentioned, we're here tonight to talk a little bit about the 211 system and our request for financial support for that line. I thought I'd start really quickly by just giving you guys a brief overview of where that, how we got through this process and where we got to this point of making this request for the financial support. In 2016, we had about 19 different agencies come together to do the very first community health needs assessment, collaborative community health needs assessment for Ross County. We involved many different agencies, a lot of their logos you'll see here on this presentation, that came together to complete an assessment. We looked at lots of different health factors and outcomes, environmental factors and health behaviors, those different types of things. Completed an assessment on that, identified top health priorities, and then utilized that assessment and those priorities to then create what we call a CHIP, or Community Health Improvement Plan. The idea behind this plan is that we would all, as different agencies, go back to our agencies and work off of this plan to create our own strategic plans for what we would do in terms of community health in the Ross County area. As part of creating that plan, we discussed a lot of things that related to those top health issues and what we felt were strategic questions that we had to ask in order to be able to make some improvements in these areas. And one of the top things that we found, really, it came down a lot to collaboration as well as an integrated system of support and navigation of services. Because what we found is we have a lot of resources here, but for some reason people just weren't getting to them. And so as we did a lot of different strategic planning exercises and really tried to peel back the onion, why was that? Why aren't people getting these resources? We really found that it came down to we all were working off of different lists of resources. The local 211 line that we had, that has been in place since 2003, really had not been financially supported or had the resources itself to be able to work to create an effective and efficient line. So what we decided to do as a team, as a group, we contracted with a third-party consultant to come in that specializes in different kind of call centers and lines. They came in, evaluated the entire system, and presented a report back to us that made recommendations. These recommendations for the current service provider were a bit overwhelming. It was going to be a lot of money for them to be able to pull up the resources and systems back to where they needed to be.
So we really embarked on a journey with them to learn more about what we could do to improve those systems, as well as make different considerations about how we would do that. At that point in time, we our entire team got together with that consultant and looked through those different options that we had, as well as with the current provider. And that provider opted to look at outsourcing those services. In terms of the cost, it was going to be a lot more efficient and effective that way. And so the team together then worked on putting together an RFP. And that RFP really was designed to let us look at all the different options we could have out there, compare prices, what would be the best for our community. And it was during that process that the United Way of Greater Cleveland's 211 system was identified as being the optimal solution for our community. And I'm going to invite Kelly Yeager-Nelson up from the United Way to tell us just a little bit about 211 in terms of what that means to United Ways across the country, as well as why we selected the 211 system through Cleveland as part of that RFP.
United Ways across the country usually serve as service providers for 211. 211 being a service that connects people to those resources in their community. One of the highest rated 211 services in the United States actually exists here in Ohio as the 211 service in Cleveland that does outsource for 26 additional counties throughout the state of Ohio. Fundraising for the 211 service is actually being done here in Ross County, so that 211 will then point all of the callers back to the services and the resources that are available here in Ross County. They have a staff of 65 to 70 people. They have navigation specialists for health, for veterans, for housing, for any need that someone calling 211 might have. They have ongoing staff training, coaching and mentoring. They record their telephone conversations for call quality monitoring and improvement. And they also have dedicated staff who will just monitor the database and continuously collect the information and update the information for Ross County. 211 in Cleveland does track with an information specialist. I mean, there is a specific person who is just looking at what's going on here, continuing to update the database, continuing to give us the most current information so that it doesn't stay siloed. It is there for everyone to be able to access when they dial 211. We are in the process of finalizing our funding for the 211 service with contracts with other community supporters, such as the city of Chillicothe. And we are finalizing our 3-year budget with the United Way of Cleveland 211 Center. We are also in the process of finalizing the 211 designation with AIRS, which is the organization that provides the licensing for 211, and that is for the change from Cider Paint Valley to United Way, holding that for Ross County. The database ramp up and data collection is something that once we have the final contract signed and the funding in place, we'll begin with Cleveland 211.
So that's really kind of the short version of it. The AIRS requires that a designee be named for every community, and that will be given over to Cider Paint Valley as part of that process. Not been given over to United Way of Ross County from Cider Paint Valley. So that's why we had United Way here tonight to talk a little bit about that. So the designation will stay here in Ross County. The fundraising will be done here in Ross County. Questions?
Okay, you may have answered this prior, and I apologize, but with this data collection, will it be analyzed to see what specific needs or growing needs will be used?
Annual report, so that's part of the reason that we selected that provider, because they've got multiple systems that can look at the data in a variety of ways. They've even got some like geospatial mapping and different things, so we might be able to create hotspots and other
And you
things
can
like that.
drill down and,
Yeah,
Yes,
Okay.
so that's part of that. You know, obviously, it probably would take us a good 6 months to a year to really get some good information. But the idea too is that we'll be able to use that later in community health planning or
Right.
any kind of real community planning.
In many cases, the 211 systems identify trends long before the community is usually even aware that those things are happening.
sure, I mean, just as a thought of using that as further outreach or knowing what organizations, what wheelhouses work well, that may not know that there's that particular need to like mobilize and utilize. Okay,
Absolutely.
sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in.
All right. And we still have the request out, for the support from the city of Chillicothe. So, yeah. All right.
We wholeheartedly support your effort and would like to say that maybe you could be a model for other agencies, that we do have a lot of agencies that are basically duplicated and doing some of the same thing that could work together. So I'm proud of the fact that you all are doing this and excited that we will have this type of services for our community 24/7. So thank you again.
All those names that you see on the list there come to the table and are participating as part of this process. So know that they are contributing and working through this together. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Kelly. So just to follow up on that report, I've talked to the county commissioners, and obviously they're an independent body, but they've indicated that it's likely that they would follow the city's lead if we decided to support this effort. I've already offered my own letter of support in the process, but I think that it's a crucial component of delivery of services to the community. I think it's been thoroughly planned. I appreciate all the research that went into choosing the organization or how it's going to run. The data collection and sophistication of the operation at Cleveland, I think, will serve this community well. The fact that they have about 1/3 of the counties in Ohio already is a good sign. So it is up for third read tonight. I would ask for council's support. Somewhat apropos that it is up for third read on 211. But in any case, thank you for your consideration, and thank you too for being here tonight. I had about 30 minutes to speak earlier, so I'll keep the rest of my remarks brief. The only thing I want to mention is that we've had a heck of a year of weather already. We've had, I think, all 4 seasons in the last 40 days. And I just want to encourage, first, thank the public for their patience with us. Because of the freezing and warming and plowing, potholes are rampant. We're trying to stay ahead of them. Our crews are somewhat tired, but they're doing a great job. The introduction of flooding to the mix in recent days has been an interesting February surprise. But just be cautious. I think we've all seen the news reports of people testing high waters and that sort of thing. But especially down in the area of the flood wall, we've had to close off some areas. And I would encourage you to share with your constituents and of course with the public. Don't be silly, don't be brave, just avoid those high waters and be patient with our cleanup efforts. With that, I will conclude my report. Thank you, President Arnold.
Thank you, Mayor Feeney. Our auditors with us this evening, and Mrs. Crystal Sputnagel.
Well, I presented a lot of information earlier, so I don't have much to talk about right now, but I do want to show my support for the 211 resource line as well. The commitment of $5,000 is minimal compared to the amount of people that this could my report.
Very good, thank you. Our law director is absent this evening. I'll just briefly say I apologize somewhat for the camera situation and the fact that the only two people you're seeing this evening, if you're in our home audience, is Mr. Falson and I. I've worked for the last 3 days putting the new camera system in. I've got most of the equipment installed. I actually had it working to where I could see it on a digital monitor, but when it came down to transferring the images to our local cable services, found out that the new stuff was digital and the local cable services was analog. So we couldn't get the signal out, so I had to go back to the one old camera that I know is functioning, and that's what we've got for this evening. There's a way to convert it, and by next meeting, hopefully we'll have it converted. I've seen the picture from the new camera. Oh boy, it's a nice picture. So it's coming soon. That's all I have to say. Moving on, we have audience participation. We have a good sized audience here this evening. Most people were here earlier for the State of the City address. Anybody want to address council this evening? Not seeing so. We'll move on to old business. Anybody have any old business? We move on to petitions and correspondence received by the clerk.
Mr. President, I did receive a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control concerning the issuance of a permit to Wild Roots Botanicals LLC, first floor only of 59 East Water Street. And other than to note that our elevator is again working, that's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, very good. Yes, it is working. Very good. Thanks for bringing that up. New business. Anybody have any new business this evening? Nothing new. All righty. Committee assignments and meeting dates. We did have kind of a flurry of committee assignments since the last meeting. Those are that I normally hand them out to. I'm going to send them digitally to you. Technology, request to approve and create an information technology specialist and establish pay and benefits. Park and Rec, legislation to appropriate $8,500 for recreation capital to repair a Yaktanji Park basketball court. Human Resources, request for legislation for correction and revision of Ordinance 109-18, that was mentioned earlier. Safety Service, request for legislation to appropriate $2,830 to the municipal court VOCA account. Utilities, a request to appropriate $7,984 to water distribution to provide temporary staffing at the water shop. Development, request for legislation authorizing the mayor to sign a contract with the Ohio Regional Development for the OCDBG Target of Opportunity Grant. Finance, request for legislation to transfer $225,000 from HUD administration to various HUD accounts. Finance and Technology, a request for legislation to close PO number in 2016 for $18,000 and appropriate $19,000 for down payment of Zucher software towards the CAD server. And City Services, request for legislation to appropriate $9,158 to repair the boiler system at the administration building so they have heat over there. And that's what we have for committee assignments. I didn't hear anybody mention that they had any upcoming meetings. Next Monday is President's Day. So skipping that, we're going to move to Tuesday, February the 19th for our next meeting for our facilities study group at 6:30 here in the facility. That next meeting is going to focus on our service facilities, which will include our city service facilities, our water and sewer department facilities, and our park and recreation facilities. And I mentioned that to all the department heads this morning for them to be available. They did mention if you have any questions or anything that you would want to have them to prepare for that next meeting, send it to me or send it to them, and you can give it to me and I'll forward it. And that way, you know, they won't be caught on the spot if you have any questions for the next meeting. So that's Tuesday, 6:30, the 19th here. And that's all I've got. Moving forward, we go to legislation for our 3 items on the agenda tonight. Mr. Paulson, whenever you're ready.
Item 1, third reading of an ordinance supporting the United Way of Ross County's ownership of the Ross County 211 resource line designation and making a 3-year commitment of $5,000 per year toward the project. Third reading.
Roll call on that legislation.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yes.
Florina.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Kearney.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
And that ordinance has passed. 211 on 211. Number 2, please.
Second reading of an ordinance repealing section 509.10 of the codified ordinances of the city of Chillicothe. Second reading.
Then we'll move on to next meeting. And item number 3.
First reading of an ordinance increasing the limit on the income tax refund blanket purchase order to $500,000 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mr. Kroll.
At this time, I would like to ask that we please waive the 3-read rule for the reasons stated earlier.
I have a motion to waive the 3-read rule, seconded by Mrs. Patrick. Roll call on that motion.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yes.
Florina.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Kearney.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
The motion has passed. Roll call on the legislation.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yes.
Florina.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Kearney.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
And that legislation has passed. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add to the evening? If not, we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Florina, seconded by Mrs. Kearney. Roll call on that motion.
Corcoran.
Yes.
Fairchild.
Yes.
Florina.
Yes.
Hines.
Yes.
Kearney.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody, and have a happy Valentine's Day.